Okay. All right. Now, so we're at the final week of the fruit of the Spirit. So we are at self-control. And I know what you're thinking when you look at the screen here. What you're thinking when you look at this picture is the same thing I was thinking. What looks like is going on here in this picture is that former President Teddy Roosevelt is trying to steal young Landon Wright's sucker. Look at it again now. That's exactly what you're seeing, isn't it? Other than the turtleneck being so high, I can totally see it being both of them. But either way, I don't know. I'll show Landon this one day. Okay, so the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. Now, I think self-control has been left at the end for a reason, because self-control is what is going to be the ever-present 24/7 aspect of your life that you're going to have to be considering and thinking about. You know, everything you do is within some measure of control, some measure of thought, some measure of purpose. And so self-control being the last one. And again, as with any of these fruits, you're never just going to wake up one day and be like, I've arrived. I am fully self-controlled. I am fully gentle. I am fully faithful. You're going to have ups and downs and hills and valleys throughout your life, and it's going to be something you work on until the day you die. Now, self-control comes from the Greek word enkratia. Yeah, I practiced that. You probably can't tell. And what it means is it means self-control, continence, restraint, abstinence, and temperance. I always love when a word is defined with the same word. Self-control means self-control. Great. But continence, restraint, abstinence, temperance, all these things give you a good idea about what self-control is and what goes into self-control. Now, 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27 and 10:13 give us a really good look inside of what real biblical self-control is. Because what I really love about this is, of course, this is the race. You know, Paul's talking about the race and the athletes that are training for games and the boxer that's training to box. And on the surface, it's an illustration. But there's something deeper to the illustration. And once you get down there, you discover that yet even deeper, there is still more to go. It's a fantastic illustration, and I think it's a perfect way to finish out the quarter here. Paul says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body, and I keep it under self-control, lest after preaching to others I myself should be disqualified. And then 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man, but God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. And that's a really good loggerhead on the other end, right? Because sin has a tendency, especially if you're a Christian and you're trying as hard as you can in life and you mess up and you fall short, you have a tendency to feel alone and like no one's going to understand. No one's going to look at me the same way, right? Sin has a tendency to make you feel isolated, to make you feel alone, to make you feel shamed, to make you feel like you just want to crawl back into yourself. And you know the devil takes advantage of that. Why do you even bother going to church if that's the kind of thing you're going to think? Why do you even bother opening your Bible if those are the kind of things you're going to say, right? And what Paul is saying here is, look, don't be like that. If you have moments in your life when you've lost control, understand you are not alone, and understand that everybody else around you, even the people that you revere the most, have moments and times in their lives when they fail and fall short. Don't feel like that. Understand that we're all in the same boat. And I think that's the important end cap he's getting at here. But what I find interesting is that Paul uses the same word for self-control in 1 Corinthians 9 that he uses in Galatians 5. And it's literally a conjunction of two words. Ego meaning self, and kratia meaning command. So what he's saying is self-control is command over yourself. It is that you are in charge of your own faculties. You are in charge of your own decision making. Now, self-control is also a synonym for being free. And this is what I find fascinating about it, because if you're not self-controlled, then you're out of control. You don't have command over yourself. You don't have facilities over your own faculties. You're out of control, and you're a slave to some other force. Typically, that other force might be whatever the thing is that has caused you to lose self-control. It might be the devil. I mean, it might be all sorts of things. But You are commanded by something else that you're unable to refuse. It has more power over you than you do over yourself. And that happens with major things and with minor things, of course. So to be free and to be self-controlled are literally one and the same. Now, Paul uses this really great illustration of an athlete preparing for the Pan-Hellenic Games. And that composed of the Olympics, that composed of most likely here the Isthmian Games is what he likely had in mind based on where he was. And talking with Corinth, the Isthmian Games seemed to be a pretty good fit. Now, we need this as people. We need this as Christians, because the truth of the matter is, so many people are not in control, right? There's a lot of things we're not in control of. And every person struggles with self-control at some point and at some level in their life, whether it's the big things or whether it's the little things. And even Christians, because we're still fallible human beings. I mean, we've been saved by the blood of Christ, but that doesn't make me perfect. I need Christ just as much now as a Christian as I did before I became a Christian. I'm just on the other side of the cross. But we're fallible human beings, and we may find self-control over some things is really easy. You know, I don't struggle with X, Y, or Z, but A, B, and C, man, sometimes that one really gets me. And so no one will ever reach a point where they say, I don't struggle with self-control in any way. And that doesn't matter if we're talking about the little things in life. I really shouldn't have another donut, but that blue one's calling me names. And I think I'm going to have to teach it a lesson, right? And you, whatever that might be, all the way up to the big things in life. The really big things where our self-control destroys our homes and our families and our lives and our jobs and our reputation. You know, everybody deals with self-control at some portion of the spectrum throughout your life. And people, not excluding Christians, have trouble controlling their tongues, their thoughts, their feelings and emotions. Oh, that's a big one. You know, feelings and emotions are a really hard one to get under control. I would argue all four of these are, and our impulses. And impulses can, and again, any of these can be little or they can be major. You know, you can have an impulse of, do I really want an extra wrench? Do I need an extra wrench too? I'm going to put this month's mortgage payment down on red. You know, I mean, the whole spectrum is open here, and I'm not saying anybody in here is struggling with any point with any of these, but I'm saying that this is real and this is happening to people. Not to mention the millions of addictions that we can also develop: alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sexual addictions, gambling addictions, eating disorder, and rage and anger. I mean, we can develop, there is a cornucopia of addictions out there, and we could probably spend the entire class time talking about just all the different types of addictions and things that people fall into where we lose control. And so every one of us at some point or another in life reach the end of the day and we think to ourselves, why in the world did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did I follow that impulse? And we all have a problem with self-control, and Paul, who knew a ton about self-control and self-discipline, has something he wants to tell us about this. And so he's using this great illustration. He begins by talking about the athlete who competes for the prize, a crown, the ultimate symbol of skill, hard work, self-discipline, the mark of a champion. When we think of a crown, oftentimes we think of, a crown. Gold, gems, jewelry, Miss America wears a crown, the king wears a crown, all these people wear crowns. And I think maybe a more modern application to what this would be like would probably be the Olympic medals. You get a prize when you compete and you win. Gold for first, silver for second, bronze for third. Or is it bronze or is it copper? I can't remember. Bronze, okay. Some kind of medal for third. But really, when Paul's talking about a perishable wreath, and I think this is where maybe we have a little bit of a disconnect in the 21st century, right? Because when we think of prizes, we think of trophies, medals, crowns, belts, awards like that. But really what they were dealing with was something more along the lines of this. It was a perishable wreath. And you were really, you hear a lot of teams say, we got that Super Bowl trophy and no one will ever take away the fact that we were Super Bowl champions, right? The Bears fans still go back to 1985, right? We still have that trophy. You can never take that away. Well, you couldn't do that with this. You could say, hey, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, I won the Isthmian Games, but your crown is dust. It's perishable. It fades. It corrupts. And so Paul is talking about the self-control that an athlete has to have. And if you want that prize, if you want that crown, then everything in your life has to be under control. And I mean everything. Have you ever known athletes? Have you ever seen the way athletes train? Some of you have athletes in your family. Some of you are athletes and former athletes yourself. And so you understand that you may want to eat, but you can't eat that. As good as that looks, as nice as that's going to be, nope. It's salads for you. It's protein for you. It's whey protein shakes that you might want to eat, but you're not eating that kind of stuff. You might want to stay up late and watch Netflix and hang out with your friends and stuff, but you can't do that because you got to get up early in the morning and train. You might want to sleep in the morning and get that extra hour and a half of sleep, but you can't do that because you got to get up and run. You might have had a really, really, really long day at work, and you might want to skip the gym on your way home, or maybe things were really hard with the kids. But you can't do that because you got to get in there and you got to train. You got to get your workout in, right? There's all these elements of self-discipline. And any one of these, if you decide, I'm going to take a week off, you're ruined. You're done. Every bit of hard work you've done is out the window. And obviously, looking at me, I'm an athlete, so clearly I have authority, right? No, I am the most non-athletic person you will ever meet in your life. I know this from watching other people. just as a disclaimer. But every single thing in your life has to be under constant control so you can get the prize. You're after the prize. That's what you want. You want the belt. You want the medal. You want the trophy. You want the recognition. You want that. And this is very telling that Paul uses this illustration because historically there's two other approaches to self-control that Paul is indirectly combating here. And what he's first off is the Greeks' method of self-control. And what did the Greeks believe? Well, they believed that the body was bad. They believed that it was weak, it was corruptible, it's your source of emotions, and those things can mess you up. They can derail you, and you should just understand that your body is bad. The spirit or the mind, however, is good. It's the seat of your rationality. It's your clear thinking. It's your way forward, right? And so the height of self-control was to do the logical thing and suppress your emotions. Yes, I'm in love with him, but he makes $350,000 a year, so the logical thing is that I should be with him even though I love him. It's that kind of thing. Or, yeah, this is going to be a job where I'm going to be really happy, but at the same time, I'm going to be miserable in this other job where I'm going to make more money. The Greeks would say, no. It doesn't matter if you're a young woman and you love him. That makes no difference. It doesn't matter if you're going to be happier over here. Your happy doesn't matter. You need the security over there, right? That's the Greek mind of thinking, the Greek way of thinking. Your emotions are your lower nature. Your heart is your lower nature. So you need to suppress that. Now, the alternate approach that Paul is arguing against comes from our Western postmodern thinking today. And your emotions and the suppressing of your emotions are actually not the problem. In fact, suppressing your emotions are bad. Suppressing your emotions in your heart is the problem. The modern day idea says don't practice self-control, practice self-discovery. You need to get out there and figure out who you are. You need to sow your wild oats and get in touch with yourself. You need to get in touch with your feelings and express them. You find what is true for you, what is right for you, and you do it. And don't let anybody get in your way or tell you otherwise. And so, in this religion that is postmodern Western culture, objective truth and you not validating my feelings about something are the only two sins you can really commit. In fact, those are the biggest sins you can commit. You telling me that there is absolute objective truth, I reject that. You tell me that you're not going to accept and celebrate what I think and feel, well, that's a sin to me as well, and that makes you a bad person, and I have to push you away. That's where we are really as a culture and as a society, and it's been like that really since the late 1990s, and it's getting worse every week that goes by, it seems like, and again, we could spend a whole class just talking about that. But the point is, the Bible says neither of these things are right. Being wholly logical is not right, and depending wholly on your feelings isn't right either. And see, we're really getting into the crux of what it means to find self-control, because really there's a balance here. The Bible, now some of you might also be saying, well, okay, but fine. Doesn't the athlete here have to have all the emotions that we're talking about, wanting the glory, wanting the prize, and then isn't the discipline really in line with the Greeks? It's mind over matter? Well, no, and here's why. Why do you want that excellence in the first place? Why do you want the glory in the first place? Why do you want that crown in the first place? What is it about it that you want? Well, the glory and the crown, they're not the conclusion of your logic. They are the desires and passions of your heart. You want X because you're passionate about it, because you love it, because you feel this desire to have it. And all of us in life have an X, right? or XYZ, things that we want, goals that we want, and we're passionate about those, and we want to try to make those happen. And the point that Paul is making is that all passions in this case are under control because there is one overarching passion that controls the rest of them, that masters and orders the rest. So you may have all these passions. I want to eat, I want to stay up late, but you don't do that because there is one overarching master passion that pulls them all in and wrangles them all in. Because you want that prize. All other things in your life are under control so that you can attain the prize and find the glory. And the Bible doesn't really divide you into faculties like mind and body, does it? The Bible doesn't do that. What it does is the Bible often talks about thinking from the heart, like in Mark 2:8, or even marrying the emotions and the mind, as in Psalm 119, 167 or 169 through 176. We see this sort of meshing of them together, because in the Bible, and I don't really know of any other ancient text or religion that does this, the heart represents the center of your personality. When the Bible talks about believing from your heart, reasoning from your heart, it's talking about the place where your fundamental beliefs, your loyalties, your truths, and your commitments sit. It is the seat of who you are as a human being, your heart. And the Bible does that on purpose. What you think, what you feel, what you decide all flow from your heart. And yet at the same time, your heart is connected to your mind, to your rational thinking. And whatever you most trust, whatever you most love, sets the course for everything else. It dictates everything about you. And so if your heart is divided and you don't have one single mastering passion in your life, then your life's going to be out of control. And you see where Paul's going with this. You see what Paul is really getting at here. What is it you're training because you have one mastering passion in your life, that crown. But as a Christian, you're training because you're also supposed to have one mastering passion in your life, Jesus Christ. The desire for the prize isn't mind over matter, or not just fueled by raw emotion. All of our passions are a combination of thinking and feeling. So freedom and self-control is rightly ordering your loves and your passions, because if you don't order them, then they will eventually contradict one another. And let me give you an example. So my desire to eat chocolate ice cream every day. I want a bowl that big and I want it that filled with chocolate ice cream. That's a passion of mine, right? I love that. That's what I want. And not only that, but I also want to lay around and watch Netflix and not really do anything. And I also don't want to exercise. I want to do that. But at the same time, I also want to be thin. So these two things are at conflict with one another. These two passions I have are butting heads. Now, if I don't have one mastering passion, then they're going to continue to butt heads. And not only that, but all the other passions I have in my life are going to come in and they're going to start bumping and hitting one another. And let's make it even a little more personal, right? Maybe I want all these things. Maybe I want to do all these things, but also one day I want to see my grandchildren. I can't have both. I can't live a life as an unhealthy slob and expect that I'm going to live one day to see my children's children. I can't do that, right? There has to be an overarching master passion here. Something's got to take control of everything else. And one of the things that Augustine said in the City of God, I don't like to call him Saint Augustine because the Bible says that we're all saints, and the sainthood is what the Catholic Church attributed to him. But I agree with him when he said that sin is disordered love. Sin is disordered love. And what it really means is that if you put anything in the place of your ultimate passion of receiving that crown, then there's going to be breakdown and you're not going to get the prize you want. You're not going to get the end result you want. If God is the greatest passion in your life and you love other things and you put other things before him, there is going to be spiritual breakdown in your life and there will be sin. That's really what Paul's getting at here. What is the thing that's most important to you? What are you striving for the most? And what are you doing to make sure that it stays in that prominent place in your life and in your heart? In other words, you're loving secondary things like they're primary things, and you're loving primary things like they're secondary things. Your priorities are all out of whack, is really what's going to cause this breakdown. And we all have these passions, we all have these desires, we all have these wants, but we have to decide which ones are the liberating ones and which ones are the ones that are going to wrap you up and hold you back. The ones that are going to keep you down. Which of my desires should be given priority? The lack of exercise and bad food, or the desire to hold my grandchildren one day? Which one do I care about more? Which one do I want more? Which one is more important to me? and you have to prioritize those. Now, again, not everybody makes the right choices, even when they understand, clearly in front of them what they have to do. But Paul is really making a tremendous example here, using this athlete. So my desire to be free and liberated in God for a prize that will never fade away, or to gratify myself in some menial, destructive way. Which one is better? Liberated and free, or because people do things because in the moment they enjoy them. People do things because in the moment there's pleasure. People do things because in the moment there's gratification in that short thing. But the ultimate gratification, the ultimate glory, the ultimate acceptance, the ultimate appreciation, the ultimate validation comes in God. And if we rightly order our loves, we will become an increasingly free and self-controlled person. That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand. And it's a powerful thing to think about. If you are self-controlled, you are truly free. Nothing is shackling you. Nothing has you by the throat. Nothing is holding you back. Now, it's just that easy, and it's also just that hard, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of prayer, a lot of practice, a lot of time surrounding yourself in God's Word, being in prayer, being around other Christians. I mean, you have to give yourself the tools to be able to do this, but it's real, and you can do it. So self-control, again, it's not mind over matter. It's not putting my emotions and my wants out in the forefront. Self-control is ultimately loving supreme things supremely. Putting the things that I should love the most in the place where they belong and keeping them there. So Paul, again, is using a limited illustration, and he knows it, because a limited desire for a limited prize means limited self-control. I mean, every athlete, I remember hearing, who was it? I think it was Randy Moss a few years back. And they were asking Randy Moss, they said, have you ever had in your professional career a time where you just lost control? And he said, yeah. So I went to the movies with, I think his wife or his girlfriend or something like that. And he said she bought a giant tub of popcorn. And he was, it's training camp is going on. He can't eat that stuff. He said he not only stole the bucket, he ate the whole bucket, right? Because sometimes we just lose control. And a limited prize means that you have a limit on what your self-control is, because when you're hungry and that butter popcorn is calling your name, you're going to give in. Now, someone like Randy Moss can probably do that and not worry about it. He's in peak physical shape at the time. But Paul's contrast is, look, if you love the supreme thing and you seek the eternal crown which lasts forever, then everything in your life will move you heavenward. If that is the pinnacle of your life, if that is the supreme love in your life, is God, Christ, the church, your salvation, then everything you do in your life is going to be brought into subjection to that, and it's going to move you heavenward. I think that's what Paul's really getting at here. And no matter what temptations you face, what sin has weighed you down in the past, God provides that way of escape, and you're equipped with the will and the tools to find it. Because what Paul's talking about here isn't a sprint. There's all kinds of races out there, 100-yard dashes. That's the only one I know of. Again, I'm not an athlete. I don't remember what any of these other ones. There's marathons you can run. I know that. Marathons and 100-yard dashes. I'm just going to assume those are the only two that are out there. But there's one or the other, right? Life's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a constant day in, day out. And what he says in what the Hebrew writer says in 12:1 is also very similar to what Paul's saying here. And he's also talking about a race. And there's a little more insight that we're getting here. The Hebrew writer says, after going through that great faith chapter in Hebrews chapter 11, he comes to Hebrews chapter 12, and he says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. I love that. Lay aside every weight and every snare. Can you imagine trying to run with weights and snares and things all over you? Can you imagine trying to run a marathon with a watermelon under each arm? Could you do that? Could you even walk a marathon with a watermelon under each arm? I carried a single watermelon through Kroger one day because the kids wanted a watermelon, and I said, all right, let's do this. So I had a watermelon like this, and I had, I think, like a TV dinner or two like under this arm, and I'm walking through the store, and I'm like, this thing's getting heavy. I mean, this is like 3 minutes after I picked it up. So this tells you something this is very telling about my upper body strength. I get to to the line. And of course, on a Sunday afternoon after church, when you go to Kroger, there's a lot of people there. And so the line is doing that thing where it's like, it's moving back through the candy aisle. And so now I'm standing there with a watermelon and TV dinners, but I'm also like rubbernecking the candy, And so now I've got a bag of like dots under this arm too. And by the time I got to the register, I was a complete wreck. I almost could lift my arms up. I'm carrying the bags out like walking all crazy and everything. Can you imagine trying to go 26 miles as a marathon with a watermelon under each arm, with a backpack of rocks strapped to your back, with your shoes tied together? See, what the Hebrew writer is saying is that you weren't made to run like that. You have to free yourself from the bonds that tie you down. You have to get those weights off of you and from around you, and only then can you run the way you were supposed to run. Only then can you really be what God wanted you to be, because a marathon runner was never meant to run like that. A marathon runner was meant to be free, and so are you in Christ. And again, no sane runner would ever do that, because if you do, one of three things is going to happen. You're going to quit, right? First thing is, I quit. This is too hard. I'm not going to make it half a mile, let alone the entire 26 miles with rocks, my shoes tied together, and watermelons under each arm. It's never going to happen. I can't do this, and so I'm out. The second thing is the weight of everything drives you into exhaustion. It crushes you and kills you. Now, think about that from a spiritual standpoint. There are people who are carrying around some heavy baggage in life, and it's crushing them. And Christ can take that away. He can get that off, but there are people that are just struggling under the weight that they're carrying around with them. The second thing is that you get rid of the weight, you unbind or the third thing is you get rid of the weight, you unbind yourself, and then you're free. And that's what God has in mind. If you wouldn't run a literal marathon like this, then why would you run your spiritual marathon like this? Why would you keep the weight there? Why would you allow the sins and snares and the lack of self-control to drag you down? It's easy to sit here and ask that question, but it's a whole lot harder to sit here and defend why I do it, right? And we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same place, and we all have the same problems. Now, how do you do this though? How do you take this weight off and get rid of this? And I think this is what's important here, because the Hebrew writer gives you the answer. He says, you look to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of God. That's how you get rid of the weight. Jesus is the answer to how you get rid of the weight. And if you want to run well, you look to Jesus because he ran well. And not only that, he came and he ran all the way to the cross. And he never gave up. Even though he felt like his heart was breaking, even though he was constantly disrespected, he was beaten, he was spit on, he was falsely arrested, he was mistried, he was mocked, he was crucified, he never quit. He never gave up. And why did he run? Why did he do it? Did you ever really think about what was his prize? What was so important to him? What was so special to him that he had to come to earth and put on flesh and run this marathon of life too? What did he need so badly, right? What prize could he possibly wanted? What prize did he not have that he could only win if he left heaven and he came to earth? And of course, the answer is you and me. We're the only prize that he could have won by putting on flesh and blood and bone and being born of a woman and coming to earth and suffering the things he suffered through. His prize was you. He fought for you. He was controlled for you. You are his crown, his glory, his prize. And the only human being who ran that race and deserved that crown was him. And he shares it with you. He shares it with me. And that's the thing that motivates us, that gives us the power and the ability, is that when we look to him and we see what he did and we see what he sacrificed and we see what he went through, we can do it too, because that same Savior who did it perfectly is saying, I'm with you all the way. Hebrews 13:5, I'll never leave you and forsake you. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I am with you through this, and I'll see you through it, through the valleys, through the mountains, through the peaks, through the darkness. I'll see you through all of it, and I'll share my crown with you. 2 Timothy 4:7-8, Paul at the end of his life makes a very interesting statement. He is in prison. He is awaiting the execution of the Roman guillotine. They wouldn't crucify him because he was a Roman citizen, but he makes this statement. He says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. Doesn't that sound very similar to what he wrote about in 1 Corinthians? I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. 3 things, he says, I did. I fought, I finished, and I kept the faith. I ran all the way to the end. Therefore, henceforth, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, that prize, the ultimate prize, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who love his, that should be appearing, I don't know why it says opinion, to all those who love his appearing. Man, spell check is really bad. But that's 2 Timothy 4:7-8. If he can do it, we can do it. And he's saying it's not just a crown for me. It's not just him sharing with me. He's sharing with you as well. You get the prize as well. So again, self-control is not something that we're going to just pick up and do and master. It's something that we're going to have to work at. And again, he gives us the tools to do it. We have prayer. We have his word. We have one another. I mean, we need to lean on one another so much because we can all really be helpful to one another. We can all really be encouraging to one another. We can be the thing sometimes that stops somebody from doing something that they shouldn't do.